Hey, what's up guys? In this video, we're going to be taking a look at all of the very best laser jammers available on the market.
Marksman interference detection only.
Marksman or ultralight 2020.
Now, when it comes to detecting laser, pretty much every radar detector actually has a laser detector built into it, but these things kind of suck at detecting laser. They're great for radar, but they're lousy against laser. I can't tell you how many times I've heard a comment from somebody who says, hey Vortex, I just bought a radar detector and 2 weeks after buying it, I just got a speeding ticket and my radar detector never went off. What happened? Well, you got hit with laser. Now, why is it that these things suck against laser, and then why do you need a laser jammer instead? So the idea is, yes, these things can detect laser, but when you look at a police laser gun like this, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be targeting your car, either the front plate or the headlights, and there's going to be a very thin, tiny beam, laser, right? That's going to be aiming at your front plate, grille, or headlights. Now, that tiny beam down at the front of your car, it's not really going to be going up to the windshield and hitting the windshield so your radar detector can pick it up. It might be easier at a distance because the beam actually does get wider at a distance, plus the handshake is going to be magnified. But nevertheless, laser is actually really, really difficult for any radar detector to pick up. Now, laser guns can acquire and lock your speed in a fraction of a second, which means by the time your radar detector goes off, if it does go off, the officer already has your speed locked in and you don't have any advance warning and time to respond. And so against laser, your radar detector is essentially a speeding ticket notifier. There are some radar detectors like the Valentine 1 that actually have really good sensitivity against laser, and if you're looking for the best laser protection in a radar detector, the V1 currently holds that crown. And you'll actually hear stories about people who even got alerted to laser before they're being targeted. This is known as scatter. The idea here is, let's say an officer is maybe shooting another car up ahead of you, and then that laser beam bounces off of their car and reflects into your radar detector, and you're able to pick it up before you're being targeted. So that can actually happen, and you'll definitely hear stories of people who have gotten saved due to scatter. Now that said, this is extremely unlikely, and this is by no means a reliable way of actually protecting you from laser. It's kind of like how you'll hear stories of people who've won the lottery, but statistically the odds are completely stacked against you. And if we were to kind of simplify things and also maybe make up some numbers, the chances of a radar detector saving you against laser, let's say, is 1%, whereas the chances of a laser jammer protecting you against laser is 99%. So yes, while this can protect you, a laser jammer is really going to actually help protect you and actually create some reliable protection. And so if you want to actually avoid tickets against laser, a laser jammer is the proper tool, not a radar detector, despite the fact that this technically can alert you to laser. Now, when you're looking at laser jammers, there's actually quite a few options available in the market, and we're going to be going over pretty much all of them that are available. Now, to simplify things, I'll say the top 5 laser jammers that are available. Number 1, as a surprise to nobody, we've got the AntiLaser Priority. This is consistently the best performing laser jammer available on the market. And if you were to say, what's the best laser jammer? ALP, period. If you don't want to watch the rest of the video, there you go. But there's actually reasons why you may actually want to get another laser jammer, even if it's not as good as the ALP. For example, we've got the Stinger fiber laser jammers, which have these super teeny tiny heads, and they're great for maybe exotic sports cars to where you don't have a good place to put a traditionally sized laser jammer head. ALPs can be kind of pricey, so if you want something more affordable, you've got the TMG laser jammer. If you ride a motorcycle, there's the Adaptiv TPX jammer that's designed specifically for motorcycles. And then maybe if you want a simpler installation, there's the Escort ZW5, which is actually a wireless laser jammer, so you don't have to drill and run any cables through your vehicle's firewall. And it does require an Escort windshield mount radar detector, but that could be another option as well. And so there's a lot of different options that you can consider. There's also going to be some laser jammers I'm going to be talking about, like some of Escort's other laser jammers. We're going to look at laser Interceptor, Blinders products, as well as K40. And down in the video description, if there's any one of these laser jammers that you want more information about, they sound kind of interesting, or maybe you've heard somebody else talk about it and you want to learn a little bit more, in the video description, I'm actually going to link to all of the different laser jammers and give you timestamps as far as when in this video I start talking about them, so you can skip right to them. And then down underneath that, you're also going to find links to where you can purchase any of the laser jammers, as well as any discount codes and coupons that are available, plus some information as far as how to actually install them properly to ensure that they're effective. You can buy the best laser jammer on the market, but if you install it incorrectly, it's not actually going to work. So proper installation is actually really, really critical with laser jammers, maybe even more so than with radar detectors. So I'm going to have some information about that down in the video description as well. So with that said, let's go ahead and start by talking about all the best laser jammers and, well, some of the worst laser jammers as well, and help you figure out which ones to get. Now, starting from the top, let's talk about the very best overall laser jammer. It is the AntiLaser Priority. For many years running now, this has been the gold standard when it comes to laser jammers. It's still, to this day, the best performing laser jammer available on the market. It beats out everything else.
Dragon Eye, ahead.
It's also updated pretty regularly as new laser guns come out. The ALP is consistently updated to make sure it stays on top of things as they change from the police officer's perspective. When you go out and test a properly installed ALP, the testing can be kind of boring sometimes because you'll find it just consistently jams every single gun all the way until you get all the way up to the gun. Like, it gets kind of boring because you're never able to get a speed reading on the vehicle. You can sometimes get a reading, and I found that depending on what configuration of heads I was using in my testing, or maybe where they're installed in the vehicle or how they're aligned and stuff. And so things can definitely vary. You're not necessarily always going to get 100% jamming capability, so something to keep in mind for those of you who are striving for perfection. You're not always going to get perfect bulletproof installs, but yes, the ALP is going to give you the best possible chance of jamming laser, especially when they're installed properly in the vehicle, in the proper location, and they are oriented properly. And it's for that reason that that's the jammer that I run on my car. I actually run a bunch of different jammers, and that's the one that I actually rely on for jamming and protection. And it's what you'll see that majority of laser jammer enthusiasts and radar detector enthusiasts all run on their cars as well. Now, the ALP supports up to 6 heads, so 3 front and 3 rear. Technically, you could do more, but it's not necessary with current setups. So it's going to offer you complete protection, both front and rear, for both smaller and larger vehicles. There's a ton of configuration options and abilities for the laser jammer to automatically shut off based off a certain speed that you're driving or a certain time that passes. So, of course, when you get shot with laser, you can slow down and disable your laser jammers manually, which is actually pretty critical. And you can also have them shut off after several seconds of being shot if you want it to happen automatically, which is a great idea. I also really love the ALP's Pro Mode feature that uses the LED to tell you exactly what the officer is doing with his gun. So for example, as soon as you get targeted with laser, the LED is going to light up strong. It's going to stay on as he continues hitting you, and then the instant he lets off the trigger, the LED will go off. This can also be really useful to let you know when you got hit with scatter, because instead of a really strong direct shot, you're just going to get a little flicker of the LED instead. Now, Pro Mode's a pretty awesome feature that you'll only see available on the ALP. It's little things like this that you'll find only here and you won't find on other laser jammers. The ALP's got a ton of really cool features and options like this, so definitely take a look over my ALP setup guide in the configuration options, and it'll go over all the different features that are available and how to configure the ALP to make it do what you want. There's a variety of accessories that you can get to improve the experience, like an external speaker to give you louder alerts, important while you're driving, and voice alerts to let you know what gun you're being shot with. There's a Bluetooth module that's available to make it easier to configure the ALP, or have your phone automatically be able to update the laser jammer whenever new firmware updates are made available. For those of you who are running the Redenso RCM custom installed radar detector, the ALP can actually integrate with it and give you one controller and display for both the radar detector and the laser jammer, again, in one integrated package.
Dragon Eye.
There are some downsides to the jammer, though. I mean, yeah, it's great. It's the best laser jammer out there, but there are some downsides. One complaint that we're hearing about right now in the forums is some of the IP protection that they've implemented to help maybe prevent the competition from figuring out how the TX sensors work. Some of those things and some of the GPS restrictions that they put in can be kind of annoying. But the main thing for me is actually the fact that there's one port on the CPU for the wired control pad, for the wireless Bluetooth module, and for the external speaker, which means if you're trying to run a control pad, wireless connectivity, and audio all at the same time, not all of that stuff is going to work properly. And what I mean is, let's say you connect your phone for Bluetooth to get the automatic updates and stuff. When you do that, one of the buttons on the wired control pad is no longer going to work to let you disarm the laser jammers. If you're not running Bluetooth, you can press either of the buttons when shot with laser to disable your jammers. When you are running Bluetooth, only one of those buttons work. Additionally, when you connect with Bluetooth, the external speaker is no longer going to function, and the only way to output audio is either through your phone speaker or through your car stereo. And sometimes there can be conflicts where if you're maybe talking on the phone, or you've got your stereo turned down, or maybe there's a Bluetooth lag to get audio from your phone through your car stereo, sometimes it's not always going to work as reliably as you would want.
Marksman or ultralight. Ahead.
And so I have it available in the background to connect as needed, just to maybe change settings or update the laser jammer, but full time I actually run it without Bluetooth. That way my control pad works, plus the external speaker works, so I always get reliable audio no matter what. So there's some weird conflicts and hardware limitations, and it's kind of funny because the ALP just recently released a hardware update to their CPU. It's the new hardware 4 version of the CPU. It primarily adds some additional memory. If you want to add the Net Radar DSP, it adds some additional radar filtering options, and it was a perfect time for them to maybe add a headphone jack to the CPU, so you could just plug in a speaker and not get all these weird conflicts with Bluetooth and control pad and stuff. But they didn't do that, and so we have one port again for wired, wireless connectivity, and audio, and you get some weird conflicts and stuff. So that's kind of annoying to me, and it kind of limits the experience, but again, you can work around it and just run with Bluetooth disconnected while you drive, and then just connect it as needed for updates. Now, some of those kind of minor annoyances and gripes aside, the ALP, again, it's going to be the best performing laser jammer available. Now, in terms of pricing, it starts at $840 now for a set of duals. If you want to get it fully tricked out with 3 heads front and rear, 2 regular heads plus a TX head in the center, plus Bluetooth and the hi-fi module, the external speaker, you're looking at $2,240. So yes, the ALP can be pricey, and you also have to factor in the cost of installation on top of it. You can either do the install yourself, or you can have a professional installer do it for you, which is typically going to be pretty recommended. Now, in my testing, the next best performing jammer is actually the new Stinger fiber jammers. These are really, really cool jammers. These jammers feature these super teeny tiny fiber optic heads, one transmitter and one receiver, that you install in the grill area of your vehicle. Now, this is awesome because if you want a very tiny and pretty much invisible laser jammer, like here's a traditionally sized laser jammer head, it's Escort ShifterMax, and here's the Stinger fiber, transmit and receive. You can see these two are so much smaller than a traditional laser jammer. With these tiny heads, you're able to stuff them into places like maybe a mesh grill without actually having to cut the grill at all to fit the heads in. I've seen people do installs putting them into little screw holes. You can install them between body panels and the panel gaps of your car. And then you can, of course, drill holes into your grill and just insert the teeny tiny little heads into the holes. They're just under 3 millimeters in diameter, so they're super teeny tiny. And with these small heads, they're going to give you more placement options as far as where you put them. Plus, they're not necessarily going to compromise the look and aesthetics of your vehicle. And it's especially nice if you drive an exotic sports car to where maybe there's not a good place to install a traditional laser jammer head. And in my testing, I found it was able to do a good job of jamming not only the easy guns, but also some of the more difficult guns like the latest Stalker XLRs, as well as a variety of different Dragon Eye guns. Now, I did see some punch-throughs in my testing. I suspect that a lot of those punch-throughs actually happened as a result of my installation. You see, I actually got the fiber heads just after I took my car in to have it professionally installed and get all the other laser jammer heads installed. And so for testing, to install them, I just kind of stuck them in some foam and zip-tied the foam to my grill. And so they moved around a little bit. Stinger recommends that they're aimed about 5 degrees above horizontal, anywhere between 0 and 10, just to prevent reflections off the ground. And so again, with laser jammers, placement and orientation is really critical here. And so there may have been some issues just due to my kind of goofy temporary testing setup, but yeah, we found that it does a good job. I mean, even considering the testing setup, it still did better than all of the other laser jammers, even the ones that were professionally installed properly in my car. So yeah, it did really, really well, and I'm really impressed here with Stinger's new laser jammers. Now, they are pricey. They're going to be roughly double the price of a comparably equipped ALP. For example, for a set of duals, so 2 transmitters and 2 receivers, you're looking at $1,690. If you'd like to go for a set of triples up front, so 3 transmit and 3 receive, plus another set of triples in the rear, you're looking at $4,490. So yes, they are pricey. Again, they're roughly double the price of a comparably equipped ALP. Now, as far as the display and controller inside the cabin, there's 3 different options. The basic one is to have just an alert LED in the cabin. You can also install it with the new Stinger strip, which gives you a little bit more control and configuration of the jammers. And then you can also plug it into the Stinger VIP radar detector to have an integrated radar detector and laser jammer, which is actually how I tested it when I was testing. Now, I'm personally not a big fan of the Stinger VIP radar detector, and I'm also not a big fan of Stinger's previous generation laser jammers. Historically, Stinger has just had issues with maintaining a reliable, well-performing product and consistently releasing good firmware updates. There's just been bugs. Like, the hardware was phenomenal, but it wasn't backed by good software and reliable firmware. There's just been bugs over the years, and it seems like just a lack of manpower to keep these things updated over time. Now, fortunately, with the newest Stinger fiber jammers, these are the real deal. I, again, wasn't a huge fan of Stinger's previous stuff, but these new laser jammers, these are pretty awesome. So if you're looking for super teeny tiny laser jammers, these are going to be a great choice. Now next, moving on to kind of the other side of the spectrum on pricing, we'll take a look at the TMG Alpha-15. These are going to be pretty much your best budget laser jammers. They're going to be maybe not quite as good as the ALP in terms of performance, but the design here is a lot simpler, and this is a great way to maybe save some cash because, well, again, it costs less than the ALP, but it actually performs pretty well regardless. Now, I gotta admit, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the setup and having everything all in one here, but I know for a lot of people this is actually a preferred solution. There's pros and cons to doing it like this, as opposed to having a remote LED, remote control pad, remote speaker, etc. And so I'm going to go over the pros and cons so that you can decide if an all-in-one package like this is right for you. Now, starting off with the laser jamming capabilities, what I found on my car is, again, it didn't perform as well as the ALP or the Stinger, but it still did pretty well overall. The biggest issues that I saw were against the Dragon Eye guns. Yes, the TMG is able to jam the Dragon Eye, but it struggles at closer range compared to the competition, and I, as expected, saw some punch-throughs here with the Dragon Eye. Now, something that may have actually helped the TMG is on my heads, if I had moved the heads a little bit closer out to the headlights, it may have actually helped the TMG. You see, one of the issues with the TMG is the heads are not really all that sensitive, and so they just have to be pushed out closer to the target areas, your headlights or your front plate, compared to jammers with increased sensitivity. And this can be kind of an issue to where maybe, depending on your installation, they won't perform as well. They're less tolerant to any sort of imperfect alignment issues. And so with the ALP, not only does it perform better, but it also gives you more options as far as placement. With the TMG, I found some issues in my testing, and I've looked at a lot of other people's tests. Fortunately, there's a lot of enthusiasts on RDF running TMGs, and as I've been seeing more and more testing, my confidence has actually been growing in the TMG. And so while it wasn't able to perform quite as well as I would hoped, I mean, I still got some punch-throughs in the 900-foot range against the Dragon Eye, and I was expecting punch-throughs maybe 300 to 500 feet at most. I was getting them farther away. If you maybe don't face the Dragon Eye, this I think could be a really good option, and even if you do, it's still going to give you some Dragon Eye jamming capabilities. Now, TMG, they're also working on a new VPR head, kind of the equivalent of the ALP's TX sensor. This is designed specifically to help improve Dragon Eye performance, and again, I tested it with the TX sensor and without the TX sensor, and I found it did better with the TX, and TMG is working on the same sort of thing. It is actually going to require a new CPU, so something to keep in mind, but that's something that they're currently working on. No pricing information is available yet, and no ETA on its release, but it is something that they're currently developing. But overall, in its current form factor, it does a great job against easy guns as well as some of the medium difficulty guns, and it does a decent job depending on your situation for some of the most difficult Dragon Eye guns. Now, the Dragon Eye guns, they're used in many states now across the country. I'll actually put the list here up on screen, and there's more and more states that are getting them over time. If you're in maybe Edmonton, Canada, or in Georgia, that's where they're most actively used. And in those situations, I would personally not necessarily recommend the TMG right now. But if you don't necessarily face it a ton, I think it could be a good option. Now, I don't have the Dragon Eye here in Washington State, but for me, the biggest issue with the TMG is really its interface. So let's talk about that next. Now, with the TMG, pretty much everything is handled here in the CPU. You've got the power button right here to turn the system on and off. You've got buttons here on top of the CPU to maybe set it to detection only mode or to disable the jammers, or a button to press to update the laser jammers. You've got the volume buttons here on the side. The speaker, it's actually built into the CPU itself. Like, everything is right here. This is different than a lot of other laser jammers that have a wired control pad that you can run somewhere else in the vehicle, or a speaker that you can install somewhere to maybe make it more ideal so that you can hear it better while driving. Here, everything is packaged into one package. This makes the installation simpler because, well, everything's right here. You just install, a power cable and plug in your heads and mount this somewhere, and there you go, it's installed. So the installation process is going to be faster if you're doing it yourself, and if you're hiring a professional, you're also going to save money on labor because it's a quicker install. Now, that said, I prefer having kind of a more modular setup. Instead of having everything here, I like having a control pad that I can put somewhere more convenient to actually just reach easily while I'm driving. With the TMG, because everything is right here, you can't maybe tuck this away and hide it somewhere out of sight. A common place to put it is actually attaching it to the bottom of the steering column. Some people maybe put it next to their driver's seat. Either way, the idea is you're going to want to have physical access to it to press the buttons or change the volume and whatnot, as opposed to maybe another system where you can just have it out of sight and have maybe just a small control pad and a little remote alert LED to give you the information that you need. In my car, I've got a hidden pocket kind of on the left of the steering wheel where I tuck it, so I've got access to it, but then I'm able to visually hide it as needed. Another thing to note is the speaker, because it's here in the CPU, depending on where you place it, it may or may not be good as far as being able to hear the alerts. When I was testing, I found with this guy, even running at full volume, it just was harder to hear the alerts compared to maybe the ALP or the Escort systems that have a dedicated speaker that I have installed kind of in my center cluster just behind the stereo.
Dragon Eye, ahead.
The TMG, as you can tell, it just makes it harder to hear the alerts, which I don't necessarily like if I've got maybe the music playing and I'm driving on the highway and there's road noise. Highway. Now, when it comes to updating the laser jammer, if you want to update the laser jamming algorithm, the way you do that is you press the update button here, put it into update mode, connect your phone, iPhone or Android, and you can update the jammer that way. Now, if you want to update not the laser jamming algorithm, but the control firmware for the CPU itself, you have to actually take a pin and press the reset button right there. So again, you are going to need physical access to this. You're not going to want to hide it completely out of sight. Now, that said, there's some good apps, especially for Android, that's going to give you a lot of the same functionality here through your phone. You are going to be able to adjust the volume. You can kind of simulate these buttons here all through your phone. On Android, you've got TMG Remote, which gives you a lot of the capability to control the laser jammer. And you've also got JBV1, which adds similar functionality. If you're maybe running a Valentine 1, you can pair your TMG with it and integrate radar and laser into one package here. On the iPhone, though, there's a TMG Defender Lite, and it doesn't add a ton of useful functionality. It gives you basic control and configuration, and you can update the laser jammers, but it's not an app that you're going to want to run while you're actually driving the way that you will want to do on Android. So on Android, it's actually a better experience here than it is on iPhone. So as an iPhone guy who a lot of times also runs an Android to get some of the Android apps, as an iPhone guy, I don't have the full functionality I would like to control it remotely, and I really don't like having something like this visible in the cabin, which is why I kind of hid it out of sight. So I like having a jammer that gives me the option to place a speaker somewhere which gives me the optimal audio volume. I like having dedicated control buttons that I can place somewhere smaller and out of sight. I don't necessarily want something like this. So this doesn't necessarily suit me and my style, but I know some people are like, hey, this is cool. I don't mind installing this somewhere in the cabin. Boom, there's all the buttons. It makes the installation simpler and easier and quicker. Great. Plus I get to save money and I don't have a ton of Dragon Eye. Done. Great package. So again, it's all about options and choosing what's the right option for you. Now, when it comes to pricing, there's a couple options, of course, depending on how many heads you get. A set of duals are going to be $629. A set of triples are going to be $699, and a set of quads are going to be $879. Now, on top of that, there's also some discounts and coupons that are available, either for free shipping for the duals or triples, or $70 off the set of quads, and I'll put the links for those down in the video description as well. So again, for those of you who are looking for a simpler and more inexpensive option, both when it comes to purchasing the laser jammer, plus making the installation a little bit quicker, or if you hire a professional, you're going to save money on the time spent on labor, the TMG is going to be a good option for you. Next, let's take a look at a motorcycle-specific laser jammer from the company Adaptiv, who makes the TPX motorcycle-specific radar detector. They've now recently released a TPX laser jammer. Now, this laser jammer performs surprisingly well. It was able to jam some of the easier and medium difficulty guns, and it was able to also give some jamming capability against the Dragon Eye. I tested it on my SUV and only targeted center mass to kind of simulate a motorcycle, but I've seen other motorcycle tests actually installed on a motorcycle, and it did very, very well there as well. Now, the laser jammer heads themselves, they look very similar to any traditional laser jammer, but what's special about this is there's things like how it comes with a control pad like this, a very simple one that you're able to press, while you're riding a motorcycle. It's waterproof in case it rains, big buttons to press in case you're wearing gloves. It's got a headphone jack so that you can wire it into your helmet. The CPU itself looks like this, and it's waterproof. There's actually some special seals and stuff here so it avoids any water intrusion. I've seen people actually do things like ALP installs on their motorcycle, but there's some difficulty there because you have to definitely make sure the CPU is protected from the elements, and the cables can be pretty long because it's designed to be installed in a car or a truck, and so you can have some issues. Maybe you'll have to chop the cables and recrimp a connector and stuff, whereas here they make the cable length actually a lot shorter when you're installing it on your bike. It also comes with a bright alert LED, so you've got the bright visual alert as well, in addition to the audio alerts in the helmet. And to top it off, the price is really nice too. For a set of duals to have two heads up front, you're looking at $550. If you want to add a rear head, it's going to be another $200. And then they also sell a rear head license plate bracket for another $30 to make mounting the rear head easier. Now, I'm not a motorcycle guy myself. I don't ride motorcycles, so it's tough for me to actually properly test and review without actually riding a motorcycle. But there's a number of people on the forums who've tested them, and they've reported good things. There was actually an issue that was discovered against the Stalker XLR to where it was having issues jamming that gun. Now, I talked to Adaptiv about it. They figured out what the issue is, and they're going to be releasing an update for that gun. Now, it's taking a little bit longer than I would like for them to actually release the update, but I'm glad to see that they're quickly figuring out what the issues are, and they're actually updating the laser jammers as necessary because, well, that's actually really critical, not only when there's bugs and issues that are discovered and need to be fixed, but also as new laser jammers come out. It's good to see that Adaptiv is actually taking the time to continue to update their laser jammers. Now, for those of you who ride motorcycles and want to get the Adaptiv TPX for your bike, I'll put a coupon down in the video description. Just type in the code Vortex and it'll save you 10% off the price of your TPX. Next, let's take a look at the laser jammer offerings from Escort. Escort currently sells 3 different laser jammers. We've got the Escort ShifterMax, the Escort ZR5, and the Escort ZW5. They all use the exact same laser jammer heads and pretty much offer the same laser jamming capabilities, but they have a different interface, and there's some pretty big differences between the jammers, so let's talk about all 3, and we'll start first with the Escort ShifterMax. Now, the ShifterMax is their laser jammer that's paired with their current custom-installed radar detectors, including the Max CI 360 and the IX CI. The laser jammer heads themselves are very similar in size to the ALP heads, and they're also able to jam some of the newer guns like the Dragon Eye guns, but again, just not as well. Now, when the ShifterMax first came out for Escort, this was their first laser jammer that was able to jam the Dragon Eye, but people bought the laser jammer and started testing and were finding, hey, this thing is not working very well. It's really struggling to jam these guns. So people actually did the testing, reported the results on Escort's forum, got accused of slander by Escort, and banned off of their forum for posting the results. And this has kind of created a rift in the community between a lot of Escort's customers, like really passionate enthusiasts, and Escort themselves. They just really didn't do a good job of handling the reports of what was going on with their laser jammer. Now, after this happened, Escort released updates to fix the issues that people reported without really ever admitting anything or fixing some of the problems that they had created in the past. So there's been kind of some issues, I guess, in the past that a lot of people are just like, I don't necessarily want to get an Escort laser jammer, but it is, to be fair to Escort, better today than it was initially at launch. Now, that said, even in its current form, running the latest firmware, it still struggles in my testing against even some of the medium difficulty guns like the LTI TrueSpeed S. The Dragon Eye jamming is also kind of worse than the competition. With the Escort laser jammer, you have a max of only 4 heads total. Initially, Escort was recommending running 2 in the front, that's all you need for the Dragon Eye, and then 2 in the rear. They later changed their recommendation to running 3 heads up front, and now they're actually recommending running all 4 heads up front for Dragon Eye jamming. In my testing, I ran 3 up front because that's how all the other systems were configured, running as a set of triples, and again, as a set of triples, it just did not perform as well as the competition. Now, let's say you want to run all 4 heads up front, cool, but then that leaves you with no protection in the rear because again, Escort is limited to only 4 heads total. You can do 2 in the front and 2 in the rear, but that's only going to be best for maybe smaller vehicles, or if you have a larger vehicle or you want full Dragon Eye jamming. It looks like 4 heads are the way to go, but again, that means no protection in the rear. Escort, with an update back in April, has actually released the ability to have the jammers automatically shut off after a set period of time. This is a basic, critical feature that was available already in Escort's previous laser jammers, and it felt like pulling teeth to get them to just please add this basic feature that's necessary. There were people running Escort laser jammers that didn't realize they didn't automatically shut off and were getting pulled over and getting ticketed because they were jamming the officer all the way down to the gun. And so this is a really critical feature, and Escort is just not doing a good job of updating their jammers to make sure it stays capable of jamming the latest guns, of adding really critical features, and again, just keeping it updated. Updates are not Escort's forte here with their laser jammers. There's also some features that are missing, things like it doesn't ID which gun you're shot with. It just says laser when you get shot with laser, as opposed to other jammers will actually tell you which gun you get shot with. I find that sometimes, depending on the gun that you're using, it can incorrectly report what direction you're getting shot from, front or rear. But the biggest thing, I guess, is its jamming capability and its continued updates over time, plus its limitation of only having 4 heads total. Escort has been hinting for years now of having a 6-head bridge box, kind of the box that goes between the laser jammer heads and the radar detector, to support 6 heads, but again, we've been waiting forever. Updates are not Escort's strong suit, and so it currently only supports 4 heads total. So as you can probably tell, I'm not a huge fan of the system. Now, the Escort Max CI 360 radar detector, I think, is an excellent radar detector, and Escort now sells the Max CI without having to automatically package their laser shifters at the same time. It used to be, when it first came out, you had to get the radar detector and the laser jammer in one package. Escort now sells a radar-only radar detector for the Max CI, and then you can pair it with something like the ALP instead, which I think is actually a great option. You do have 2 completely different independent systems, so you do have 2 controllers, not one, and that's actually how I run it in my car. But it's a great option to have a standalone radar detector and a standalone laser jammer, both of which are actually really, really good. So if you're looking at the Max CI as a radar detector, that would be my recommendation. I would say buy it a la carte, just with the radar detector, maybe front and rear antennas to get your arrows for radar, and then pair it with a better laser jammer, something like the ALP. Now, the primary reason I would say yes, go ahead and get Escort's laser jammer, it would be kind of the exception to the rule, I guess, but it would be if you're looking for a fully integrated radar detector and laser jammer package and you want to run the Max CI 360, then in that case, yes, you can have the same controller and display for both radar and laser. The laser, again, it's not going to work as well, but it's still a pretty good laser jammer overall. You're going to be limited on heads, but if you drive a smaller car, so larger head size, or a larger surface area is not going to be an issue the way it'll be on like an SUV or a truck or a van or something. If you drive a smaller car, that's okay. If you want maybe front-only protection and you're okay with sacrificing the rear, you could go that route. So there are some situations where it can make sense, but I think in general, I would say skip the Escort ShifterMax laser jammer with the Max CI 360, get it radar only, and then run a different laser jammer alongside it. Now, moving on to Escort's other laser jammers, as I mentioned before, they use the exact same heads and they have the same jamming capabilities. They just kind of have a different interface. The first one is going to be the Escort ZR5. This is going to be your standalone Escort laser jammer that you don't have to pair with the custom installed radar detector. Now, with the ZR5, there's pretty much no advantage to getting it over an ALP. It costs more than the ALP, it has fewer features, and it jams worse than the ALP. Plus, you don't have good updates the way you do with the ALP. I mean, there's really no good reason to get it. You're limited to 4 heads, so again, you have the same issues with larger vehicles or front and rear protection, but maybe the only situation where I think it would make sense for somebody to get is it can both be run standalone, and you can also plug it into a compatible Escort windshield mount radar detector. So if you're looking for that integration between a radar detector and a laser jammer, you can do it with the ZR5 and have it actually wire into your radar detector, so all of the laser jammer alerts come through the radar detector, and you can use the radar detector to control your laser jammer and shut it off. There is no automatic shutoff capability with the ZR5 the way there is with the ShifterMax. Again, that's been something promised from Escort for a while, but coming back to Escort's slow updates, if they ever update at all. It's been promised forever. We're still waiting. Hasn't been released. So there is no automatic shutoff capability with the ZR5 the way there is with the ShifterMax. Either way though, at $849, I don't really see a good reason to recommend the ZR5. Now that said, Escort also sells the ZW5, which does have some pretty cool unique features that I don't see available in any other laser jammer. The ZW5 is essentially a wireless version of the ZR5. With the ZR5, to wire it into the radar detector, you have to actually run a cable through your vehicle's firewall and plug it into the radar detector that way. Same thing with the other laser jammers for that matter. You're going to have a cable running through your vehicle's firewall into the car to connect to your display or controller or CPU, things like that. The ZW5 allows for wireless integration. The idea is you have a box that's installed in your engine bay somewhere, and you have a special power cable inside the car that plugs into the radar detector, and those two are able to wirelessly communicate through the vehicle's firewall without having to run any cables, which is great because it means without having to do that cable, it makes the installation quicker and simpler. If you're leasing your car, you don't have to worry about that. It's not always a huge issue. I've drilled a hole through my leased car and it wasn't a big deal. Sometimes there's a grommet even to where you can run a wire, so it's not always a big deal, but it is convenient if you're leasing your car. My wife didn't necessarily want me running cables through her firewall, and so I'm running ZW5s instead. It just has less of an impact to the vehicle. Once you have it set up and running, again, you're going to do the same sort of thing to where all the alerts show up on the radar detector, and you can double press the mute button to disable the laser jammers when you're shot. Now with the ZW5, you're currently only officially limited to 2 heads. Now with the ZW5, it has ports for up to 4 heads, but Escort currently officially recommends only running 2. Ports 3 and 4 are actually capped off, and you can buy 2 more heads and plug them in, and I did find that they work, and they all do fire just like with the ZR4, or ZR5 rather. ZR4 was older gen stuff. With Escort, what they're saying with the 4 heads is that there's not enough power, what they told me, to run both the wireless communication module and 4 heads all simultaneously. Now, that said, I've also heard rumors and rumblings that they're trying to get it to support 4 heads, but currently, officially, it only supports 2 heads, which means it's only going to be maybe optimal for smaller cars, like my wife's Honda Fit. It's not necessarily going to be the best for bigger, larger vehicles with only 2 heads. Plus, you're not going to be able to install them in the rear. Even if you wanted to install the other 2 heads in the rear, well then you'd have to physically run cables through your car's firewall out to the back, which then kind of defeats the whole point of going wireless in the first place. So if you were to do the 4 heads, it would just be to run them all up front. So this is a front-only laser jammer for smaller cars for people who run a compatible Escort windshield mount radar detector. So if that's your criteria and that's what you're looking for, it's available for $849. There's 2 different versions, and it just varies depending on which power cable you get that plugs into your windshield mount radar detector. There's a cigarette lighter version, and there's also a hardwire version if you don't want to use your cigarette lighter and you want a more permanent installation. And I'll link to both down in the video description for that, just like with everything else. Now, finally, moving on to some of the laser jammers that I don't recommend. We've got the Laser Interceptor, which before the introduction of the AntiLaser Priority, it used to be the best laser jammer available. It started to struggle once some of the newer Dragon Eye guns started coming out with variable pulse rates, and it wasn't able to keep up, and so it's not even available for sale anymore, and yeah, it doesn't cover the latest guns, but it's still effective against some of the older legacy guns that are available. You could maybe always buy one used online, but just be aware that the heads are much physically larger, and so if you ever want to upgrade down the line, not only are you going to have to run new cables and control switches in the cabin and everything, but if you cut holes in your grill, the holes are going to be pretty big if you then want to install another laser jammer head, which is actually something that was kind of common when people were switching from LIs to ALPs, is they would just have these big holes in their grill. So something to be aware of. Now Escort, with their older 9500 CI, which is now discontinued, sometimes there's the Laser ShifterPro, which was just a repackaged laser interceptor. Unlike the LI though, it never received a single update, and it suffers all the same issues in terms of not being able to jam the latest guns, which is why it was discontinued and actually now replaced with the ShifterMax. But for those of you running an older 9500 CI or something and you're seeing the Laser ShifterPro, that's what the story is on that one. Now, speaking of older laser jammers, there's also the Blinder HP 905, which is what I used to run before upgrading to the ALP. In terms of effectiveness, it's pretty comparable to the Laser Interceptor. It's not able to jam the newest guns that are out there, and it hasn't actually even been updated in like 5 years or so. It's still available for sale, but the big benefit of that one is just it had smaller heads, closer in size to the ALP, smaller than the LIs, which is the main reason that I ran it at the time. But yeah, it's not a laser jammer that you're going to want to get nowadays. And then finally, there's the K40 Defuser Optix, which is a surprisingly popular laser jammer, but in my testing, it was actually the worst performing laser jammer out there. When I tested it against the Dragon Eye, even though they advertised that they can jam the Dragon Eye, it not only didn't jam either the Dragon Eyes, but it didn't even alert. It was the only laser jammer to not even alert to the Dragon Eye, much less not jam it. Now here's a quick demo so you can see for yourself. We'll go ahead and hit the K40 with the Dragon Eye Compact first. You'll notice when we do that, we can target the heads directly and we're going to get no alerts. However, if we hit it with the PL3,
Laser.
it goes off instantly. Switch back over to the Dragon Eye. No alert. PL3. Now, I've seen some other testing where it was able to jam the Dragon Eye, but it was an older version of it, and even though it was able to jam it, it wasn't able to do it very well. So it can jam the Dragon Eye, but only older versions, and even then, not very well. I also find that it struggles to reliably jam some of the medium difficulty guns like the TrueSpeed S and the Stalker XLR. Now, it is an updatable laser jammer, but in the 3 years since it's been available, it's had 0 updates. And again, updates are really critical for a laser jammer, but if the company's not going to release any updates to improve the jammer over time, it doesn't really matter. So it's just not a jammer that I recommend really at all. So I guess maybe to then summarize the top 5 laser jammers that I do recommend. Number 1, we have the AntiLaser Priority as the best performing overall laser jammer. It's my pick. It's what I run myself to keep me protected. So if you're looking for the best laser jammer, go get the ALP. Second, we've got the Stinger fiber jammers. They've got the super teeny tiny heads. They are expensive, roughly double the cost of an ALP, but I think they're maybe best suited to exotic sports car owners if you're looking for something really stealthy and hidden and effectively invisible, especially if your car isn't really conducive to a traditional laser jammer head install. If you're looking for something simpler and less expensive, the TMG Alpha-15 is the way to go. If you ride a motorcycle, the Adaptiv TPX is a good option for you. And finally, if you're looking for a wireless laser jammer that doesn't have to run any cables through your engine bay, if you're running an Escort windshield mount radar detector and you drive a smaller car and only want front protection, then the Escort ZW5 is going to be a good option for you as well. So these 5 laser jammers, as well as all the rest of them, I'll have linked to down in the video description. And I'm also going to have a setup guide. It's for the ALP that goes over how many heads to get, which accessories to get, where to install them in your car, and how to install them to ensure that they work well. The installation really is critical, so definitely make sure you take a look at that. Some things like with the Stingers will be a little bit different because you've got separate transmit and receive heads. The TMG is also a little bit different because the heads do need to be pushed closer out to the target areas because of the reduced head sensitivity and stuff. So there are a few differences here and there, but fundamentally that should give you a pretty good idea as far as Escort, kind of TMG, of course the ALP, etc. But I'll post some additional links as far as where to post the heads on your vehicle, whether you're running an ALP or you want to get a TMG or a Stinger or whatever else. I'll link you to the section on RDF where you can get recommendations as far as where to install the jammer heads on your car. So awesome, there you go. There's a run through as far as all the best and worst laser jammers available on the market. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.